The wind howled across the red dunes of Outpost Theta, kicking up swirls of rust-colored dust that clung to every surface like dried blood. Inside the reinforced dome, Corporal Ren Vale wiped sweat from his brow with the back of a grease-streaked hand, squinting at the flickering diagnostic screen of a malfunctioning plasma regulator. It had been 5 years since the Treaty of Xylos ended the brutal war between the Terran Coalition and the Velari Dominion. A war that had scorched moons and shattered fleets. A war Ren had barely survived. He'd been a junior engineer back then, patching hull breaches on the front lines. Not some dusty relic stationed on a forgotten rock orbiting a dying star. But peace had its price, and for Ren, that price was quiet exile far from Earth. Far from everything he'd once known, including her. He didn't hear the alarms at first. Not until the base-wide klaxon blared like an angry god, jolting him upright. Red emergency lights pulsed through the corridor as Base Commander Lyra Chen's voice crackled over the intercom, sharp with disbelief. All personnel to the hangar bay. Unknown vessel just breached orbital perimeter. No IFF signal, but it's Velari. And it's landing. Ren's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Velari ships didn't just land on human outposts. Not anymore. Not after the treaty, not after everything. He sprinted down the corridor, boots thudding against grated metal, thoughts racing faster than his feet. What if it was a scout, a spy, or worse, retribution? But when he skidded into the hangar, breathless and wide-eyed, what he saw stopped him cold. She stood alone in the center of the landing pad, bathed in the harsh sodium lights of the bay. Tall, regal, clad in gleaming cerulean armor that shimmered like liquid sapphire under the lamps. Her skin was the deep blue of twilight oceans, and her hair, long, silken, and bone-white, flowed like a frozen waterfall down her back, catching the light with every slight movement. Her eyes, luminous and silver as twin moons, locked onto his the moment he stepped into view. Recognition flared in them, followed by something far more devastating. Betrayal. Ren Vale, she said, her voice resonating like distant chimes carried on a desert wind. Why did you abandon me? The words struck him like a physical blow. Around him, the other personnel froze. Technicians, medics, even grizzled gunners. All gawking with a mix of fear and awe. No one moved. No one breathed. Only Ren stood rooted, mouth dry, palms slick. Her name trembled on his lips before he could stop it. Zyra. Princess Zyra of House Velari, now Queen Zyra, sovereign of the 7 moons and heir to the celestial flame, stepped forward. Her armor hummed faintly with contained energy, and the air around her seemed to warp with restrained power. She ignored everyone else as if they were dust motes in sunlight. Her gaze never left his. You vanished, she said, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hangar. After Xylos, after we stood together on the bridge of the Dawnbreaker, watching the armistice flare light up the void, you said you'd return. You promised. She clenched her fists, the delicate joints of her fingers tightening around nothing. You said you'd come back to me. Ren swallowed hard, his throat tight. He'd thought about this moment 1,000 times over the past 5 years, rehearsed excuses in his head like lines from a bad play. But now that she was here, real, furious, beautiful, he found himself utterly speechless. He tried to write her once, sent 3 letters through the fragile diplomatic channels. All returned unread, marked, refused. He'd assumed she'd moved on, found some noble Velari warlord to share her throne. Not this, never this. I couldn't, he finally managed, voice rough. After the war, Earth's high command reassigned me, blacklisted me, really, called me a security risk for getting too close to the enemy. He almost laughed then, bitter, hollow. Turns out loving your enemy is still treason, even in peacetime. Zyra's expression flickered. Anger gave way to something softer, something wounded. You didn't even try, she whispered. Before Ren could respond, alarms blared again, different this time. Sharper, deadlier. Commander Chun rushed in, face pale. Ren, we've got hostiles inbound. Coalition warships, 3 cruisers breaking orbit. They're hailing us, demanding we surrender the alien immediately. Zyra's eyes narrowed, glowing faintly with inner fire. They followed me, she said. Typical Terran paranoia. They think I've come to assassinate your leaders or steal your secrets. She turned to Ren, her voice laced with both challenge and sorrow. Is that what you think too? No, Ren said instantly. Never. The base shook as distant explosions rippled through the atmosphere, orbital bombardment. Not enough to breach the dome, but enough to rattle teeth and nerves. Chun cursed under her breath. We've got minutes before they glass this rock. Evac ships won't hold half the crew. Ren's mind raced. He knew Outpost Theta like the lines on his own palms. Every conduit, every escape tunnel, every hidden storage bay where he'd stashed spare parts and contraband snacks. And he knew one thing more. The old prototype jumpship buried beneath Storage Bay 4. It was half-scrapped, unregistered, and hadn't flown in a decade. But if anyone could get it running in 5 minutes, it was him. Zyra, he said, stepping forward and grabbing her armored forearm. The contact sent a jolt through him, warm, electric, achingly familiar. Trust me one more time. Her silver eyes searched his face, and for a heartbeat, he saw the girl he'd known on the Dawnbreaker. Fierce, brilliant, secretly fond of Earth chocolate and bad puns. Then she nodded. Always. What followed was a blur of shouting, running, and controlled chaos. Ren barked orders like he'd been born to command, surprising even himself. Jenkins, divert all non-essential power to the hangar shields. Miri, prep medkits for 15. Chun, you're with us. Zyra moved like a storm given form, her presence both terrifying and galvanizing. When a laser volley struck the outer gate and 2 Coalition Marines rappelled in, she disarmed them with a flick of her wrist, using their own rifles to knock them unconscious without killing them. Velari honor forbade unnecessary bloodshed, even in war. They reached Storage Bay 4 just as the ceiling caved in above the main hangar. Ren scrambled over twisted metal, yanking panels off the jumpship's hull, while Zyra held off another wave of attackers, with pulses of concussive energy from her gauntlets. Smoke filled the air. Sparks rained down like angry fireflies. And yet, amid the chaos, Ren couldn't help but notice how her white hair had come loose from its braid, how a smudge of soot marked her cheek, how she still fought with that same elegant ferocity he remembered. "Why did you really come?" he asked as he hot-wired the ignition coil, fingers flying. "A queen doesn't risk her life for a broken promise." Zyra deflected a plasma bolt with a shimmering energy shield that erupted from her palm. "Because I am not just a queen," she said, voice strained but steady. "I am Zyra, and you are the human who taught me that peace is more than the absence of war. You are the one who laughed when I mispronounced pineapple, who shared your last ration bar when the replicators failed, who held my hand when my brother's funeral pyre lit the sky of Velos Prime." She turned to him, eyes blazing. "You are the one I chose, not for alliance, not for politics, but for my heart. And no treaty, no distance, no cowardice can change that." Ren's chest ached. He'd spent years telling himself it was all a dream. A beautiful, impossible dream forged in the heat of war and desperation. But here she was, real and furious and radiant, willing to die for him. The jumpship coughed, sputtered, then roared to life with a sound like thunder trapped in a bottle. "Everyone in!" Ren yelled. Chan, Miri, Jenkins, and a handful of others piled inside the cramped vessel, wide-eyed and breathless. Zyra was last, stepping aboard with regal grace even as the walls around them buckled. They blasted through the collapsing roof just as the Coalition cruisers unleashed their main batteries. Outpost Theta vanished in a fireball behind them, swallowed by orange and red. Ren guided the jumpship into the asteroid belt, weaving through jagged rocks with instincts honed by years on the front lines. Zyra sat beside him in the co-pilot's seat, her shoulder brushing his, her presence both comfort and complication. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Ren spoke. "Where to now?" Zyra looked out at the stars, her reflection shimmering in the cockpit glass. "My flagship, the Eclipse Sovereign, is waiting near the Kuiper Drift. But they'll track us. Your people. They won't stop. They think you're here to start another war," Ren said. "They think wrong," Zyra replied. "I came with an offer of marriage, an official union between Velari and Terran bloodlines. A true alliance, not just paper and promises. My council opposed it, called it reckless, but I didn't care. I knew you'd understand." Ren stared at her, stunned. "You came all this way to propose?" "I came," she said softly, turning to face him, "to bring you home." The word hung in the air like a fragile star. Home. He hadn't had one in years. Not since Earth exiled him. Not since he'd walked away from Zyra to protect her from political fallout. He'd thought he was doing the right thing, sacrificing his happiness for her safety. But looking at her now, seeing the raw determination in her eyes, He realized his mistake. He'd underestimated her. Underestimated them. Proximity alert beeped. 2 coalition destroyers had broken formation, closing in fast. "We can't outrun them," Chun said from the rear, voice tight. "Not in this bucket." Ren gritted his teeth. "We don't have to outrun them. We just have to outthink them." He plotted a course through a magnetically unstable nebula, a region human ships avoided because of navigation failures. But Ren remembered something Zyra once told him. Valari tech used quantum resonance, unaffected by electromagnetic interference. If they could reach it before the destroyers locked a firing solution. The jumpship shuddered as laser fire scorched past the hull. Zyra placed a hand on the console, her fingertips glowing faintly blue. "Allow me." She channeled energy into the ship's thrusters, boosting their speed beyond safe limits. The G-forces pressed them into their seats, vision tunneling. But it worked. They skimmed into the nebula's violet haze just as the destroyers pulled up short, unwilling to risk their systems. Inside the nebula, the stars vanished, replaced by swirling clouds of ionized gas that painted the cockpit in shades of amethyst and gold. For the first time in hours, they were safe. For now. Zyra leaned back, exhaustion finally visible in the slump of her shoulders. "You still haven't answered my question," she said quietly. "Why did you abandon me?" Ren took a deep breath. "Because I loved you," he said. "And I thought if I disappeared, they'd stop watching you. Stop using you as a political pawn. I thought you'd be safer without me." She laughed then, a soft, sad sound that broke his heart all over again. "Oh Ren, you foolish, noble human. Do you truly believe a Valari queen needs protection from politics?" She reached for his hand, her touch warm despite her cool skin. "I am strongest when I stand beside you, not alone." He turned his hand to lace his fingers with hers. Her skin was smooth, faintly luminescent, and it felt like coming up for air after years underwater. "Then let's not be alone anymore." But their moment was shattered by a new alert, this one internal. A breach in the lower deck. Someone had gotten aboard during the chaos. Before Ren could react, the hatch exploded inward, and a figure in black tactical armor stepped through, pulse rifle raised. It was Lieutenant Darrow, Ren's former squadmate, now a coalition internal security officer. His face was hard, eyes cold. "Step away from the alien, Vale. This ends now." Zyra rose slowly, her posture regal despite the cramped space. "You will not take him," Darrow sneered. "You're under arrest for illegal entry, conspiracy, and attempted sedition. And him." He jerked his rifle toward Ren. "He's coming with me, traitor or not." Ren stood, shielding Zyra with his body. "You don't understand, Darrow. She's not the enemy. She's an alien," Darrow spat. "And you're a disgrace to the uniform." Before either could move, Zyra moved faster than sight. One moment she was behind Ren. The next, her hand was at Darrow's throat, not crushing, but holding with impossible strength. "I could end you," she said, voice quiet but dangerous. "But I will not, because Ren values your life, and I value his heart." Darrow struggled, face reddening, but couldn't break her grip. With her free hand, Zyra tapped a device on her wrist. A shimmering portal opened in midair, Valari teleportation tech. From it stepped a dozen of her royal guard, tall and armored like her, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Darrow's defiance crumbled. You've been planning this." "No," Zyra said, releasing him. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this." She turned to Ren. "The Eclipsed Sovereign is cloaked nearby. We can leave, right now. But once we do, there's no turning back. You'll be branded a deserter, a traitor. You'll never see Earth again." Ren looked at his old friend, at the fear and confusion in Darrow's eyes, then back at Zyra, at the woman who had crossed stars for him, who had fought armies for a chance to stand beside him once more. He thought of all the lonely nights on Outpost Theta, staring at the same stars she must have seen from her palace on Velos Prime. He thought of pineapples and bad jokes and hands clasped in silence during funeral rites. "I already lost Earth," he said. "I won't lose you too." Zyra's eyes softened, and for the first time since she'd landed, she smiled. A small, radiant thing that lit up the dim cabin like a sunrise. She held out her hand. "Then come home." As Ren took it, the royal guards formed a protective circle around them. Darrow made no move to stop them, his rifle hanging limp at his side, his face unreadable. Through the portal, Ren glimpsed the sleek curves of the Eclipsed Sovereign, its hull gleaming like polished obsidian against the void. But just as they stepped through, the ship's alarms screamed again. Not from coalition forces, but from deep space. A massive vessel, unlike any Terran or Velari design, emerged from hyperspace near the nebula's edge. It was jagged, organic, pulsing with dark energy. Zyra's face paled. The Kthar. Ren frowned. I thought they were a myth. Not a myth, she said grimly. An extinction-level threat. They consume entire civilizations. We thought we'd driven them back beyond the galactic rim. But if they're here... She looked at Ren, fear and resolve warring in her eyes. This changes everything. The Kthar ship loosed a beam of black energy that swallowed a nearby asteroid whole, erasing it from existence. The Coalition destroyers, still lingering at the nebula's edge, opened fire, but their weapons glanced off the alien hull like rain on stone. Zyra activated her comms, barking orders in Velari. All ships, prepare for evacuation protocol Omega. We must warn both our worlds. Ren squeezed her hand. We're in this together now, right? She nodded, her silver eyes blazing with renewed purpose. Always. As the eclipsed sovereign powered up its weapons and shields, Ren stood beside his queen, no longer a discarded soldier, no longer alone. The war ahead would be darker and deadlier than any they'd known. But for the first time in years, he felt hope not just for survival but for something more. For a future where love could bridge galaxies. Where peace wasn't just a treaty but a shared life. And as the Velari flagship surged forward to meet the unknown, Ren Vale knew one thing for certain. He would never abandon her again. The eclipsed sovereign shuddered as it dove into the Kthar vessel's gravity wake, its obsidian hull vibrating like a struck gong. Outside the viewport, reality itself seemed to warp. The stars stretched into smears of light, and the nebula's violet clouds twisted into grotesque spirals. Zyra stood rigid at the command dais, barking orders in sharp, clipped Velari while her fingers danced across a holographic interface that shimmered like frozen lightning. But Ren saw the tremor in her hands, the tightness around her eyes. She was afraid. He stepped beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. "What aren't you telling me?" he asked quietly, so only she could hear. She didn't look at him, but her voice softened. The Kthar don't just consume worlds, Ren. They harvest consciousness. They strip minds of memory, identity, love, everything that makes a being alive, and weave them into their hive mind. It's not death. It's erasure. A cold dread settled in Ren's gut. "And you faced them before." "My brother," she whispered. "He didn't die in battle. He was taken. His body returned. Empty. A shell." She finally turned to him, eyes glistening. "I watched him forget his own name. Forget me." Ren's chest tightened. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers despite the curious glances from her bridge crew. "Then we stopped them. Together." Before she could respond, the ship lurched violently. A section of the outer hull peeled away like burning paper, swallowed by a tendril of black energy that lashed from the Kthar vessel. Alarms blared in a language Ren didn't understand, but the panic on the crew's faces translated clearly enough. "They're targeting our quantum core," a Velari officer shouted. "If it destabilizes, the whole system goes up," Ren finished, already moving. "Where's the engineering bay?" Zyra grabbed his arm. "It's too dangerous. The radiation alone. I'm an engineer, remember?" He gave her a crooked grin. "And I owe you a few rescues after today." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, but her eyes were full of worry. "Then don't make me chase you across another galaxy." He kissed her forehead quickly, just a brush of lips against cool blue skin, and sprinted for the lift. Behind him, he heard her issue new commands, her voice stronger now, steadier. She was rallying her people, and he had a ship to save. The engineering bay was chaos. Sparks rained from the ceiling, and the air smelled of ozone and something sickly sweet, like rotting fruit. The quantum core pulsed in the center of the room, a sphere of swirling cobalt light cradled in crystalline arms. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, leaking dark energy that coiled like smoke. Ren cursed. He'd seen cores fail before, but never like this. This wasn't a malfunction, it was an infection. The Kthar weren't just attacking the ship. They were rewriting it. "Override protocols," he yelled to the nearest technician, a young Velari with singed eyebrows. "Divert all non-essential systems to containment field generators. And get me a resonance modulator, now." As the crew scrambled, Ren pulled open a panel and began rewiring circuits by hand, his fingers moving faster than thought. He remembered a trick he'd learned patching hull breaches on the Dawnbreaker, using harmonic feedback to stabilize failing plasma conduits. Maybe it would work here, maybe it wouldn't, but it was all he had. Outside, the battle raged. The Coalition destroyers, realizing the true threat, had joined the fight, their lasers carving arcs of fire across the Cthar vessel's hide. But every shot that landed seemed to make the alien ship stronger, its surface rippling like muscle-absorbing impact. Back on the bridge, Zyra watched the tactical display with growing horror. The Cthar weren't just defending, they were learning. Every weapon fired, every maneuver executed, was being absorbed, analyzed, countered. They were evolving in real time. Then came the transmission. It wasn't audio. It wasn't even language. It was a feeling, cold, vast, and utterly empty, poured directly into her mind. A voice without sound. Surrender your thoughts. Become whole. She gasped, staggering back. Around her, her officers cried out, clutching their heads. The Cthar were inside their ship, inside their minds. Zyra! Ren's voice crackled over the comms. I've got the core stabilized, but it won't hold. We need to jump now. She forced herself upright, shaking off the psychic assault. Prepare for emergency translite jump. Coordinates, Velos Prime. No! Ren's voice was urgent. They'll track us. They'll follow. We can't lead them to your homeworld. Then where? She demanded. There was a pause. Then, quietly, Earth. Zyra froze. They'll shoot us down before we clear the atmosphere. Not if we make them listen, Ren said. I know someone. Admiral Reyes. She was my mentor before everything fell apart. If anyone will hear the truth, it's her. Zyra weighed the risk. Earth was a gamble, a long shot wrapped in hostility. But staying meant death for everyone on the ship. And if the Cthar reached either Earth or Velos Prime, do it, she said. The jump tore through space like a blade through silk. The Eclipse Sovereign emerged in Earth's orbit amid a storm of defensive fire. Coalition battleships swarmed like angry hornets, weapons charged and ready. This is Terran Defense Command. A voice boomed over all frequencies. Identify yourselves or be destroyed. This is Queen Zyra of the Velari Dominion. Zyra broadcast, her voice calm despite the shaking in her hands. And Corporal Ren Vale of the Terran Coalition. We come not as enemies, but as warnings. A greater threat approaches, one that will consume us all if we do not stand together. Silence. Then static. Then, a new voice, older, weary, but sharp as steel. Ren? Is that really you, boy? Ren exhaled in relief. Admiral Reyes, we don't have much time. What followed was a tense standoff. Reyes ordered the fleet to stand down, but only just. Suspicion hung thick in the comms channels. But when the Cthar vessel tore through the Oort cloud like a shark through water, all doubts vanished. Earth's defenses opened fire. Velari ships, summoned by Zyra's emergency beacon, warped in from hyperspace. For the first time in history, human and Velari fought side by side, not as former enemies but as allies. Yet the Cthar adapted. Their ship grew larger, absorbing weapon fire, reshaping itself into something even more monstrous. It launched smaller drones, sleek, insectoid things that burrowed into planetary defenses, turning satellites and orbital guns against their own creators. During a lull in the battle, Ren and Zyra found a quiet corner of the ship's observation deck. The planet hung below them, beautiful and fragile. Blue oceans, swirling white clouds, the green-brown patchwork of continents. Home. I never thought I'd see it again, Ren said softly. Zyra leaned against him. It's more vibrant than I imagined. He chuckled. Wait till you taste real pizza, or get caught in a thunderstorm, or argue with a vending machine. She smiled, a real one this time. I'd like that. Then the deck shook. A Cthar drone had breached the hull. It skittered down the corridor, all claws and glowing eyes, screeching in a language that made teeth ache. Ren grabbed a plasma cutter from a nearby tool rack. Zyra summoned her energy blades, twin crescents of blue fire that hummed with power. They fought back to back, a perfect dance of human grit and Velari grace. Ren jammed the cutter into the drone's joints while Zyra severed its neural spine with a single, graceful arc. It collapsed in a heap of twitching metal and dark ooze. Breathing hard, they looked at each other and burst out laughing. It was absurd, terrifying, beautiful. You fight well, she said. wiping ooze from her cheek. "You're terrifying," he replied, grinning. "In the best way." But their moment was cut short. A new alert flashed across the ship systems. The Cthar weren't just attacking Earth, they were targeting the Moon. Specifically, the Terran-Velari Peace Accord archives, where the original treaty was stored. Why? Then Ren remembered. The treaty wasn't just paper. It had a quantum entanglement core, a symbol of mutual trust. If they corrupt it, they'll sever the last thread of peace between our peoples. Zyra finished, eyes wide. They don't just want to destroy us. They want us to destroy each other. They raced to the shuttle bay. No time for the flagship. Just a small, fast interceptor. As they launched, Earth's surface lit up with anti-orbital flak, Coalition and Velari ships weaving through the storm to cover them. The Moon's surface was already scarred by Cthar incursions. The Archive's dome glowed with emergency lights, its shields flickering. Inside, the treaty core pulsed gently in its pedestal, a small, humming sphere of intertwined human and Velari DNA signatures. But standing before it was a figure in tattered Coalition armor. Darrow. He turned as they entered, face gaunt, eyes hollow. "You shouldn't have come." "Darrow?" Ren stepped forward. "What happened?" "The Cthar. They got inside," Darrow whispered. "Not my body, my memories, my anger. They fed on it, made it stronger." He raised a trembling hand. "They showed me how weak peace is, how love is just a distraction." His voice broke. "They showed me you were right to leave her." "No," Zyra said fiercely. "They showed you your fear. That's all they have, fear and hunger." Darrow's hand hovered over the core. One touch, and the entanglement would fracture, turning the symbol of unity into a weapon of division. Ren didn't hesitate. He walked toward his old friend, hands raised. "I'm not leaving you, Darrow. Not like this." "You should," Darrow choked out. "I'm already gone." But Ren kept walking. "You remember the bunker on Mars? When the reactor blew and we were trapped for 3 days. You shared your last protein bar with me. Said, 'If we die, I'm not letting you starve first.'" He stopped just inches away. "That man is still in there, and I'm not giving up on him." Tears streamed down Darrow's face. "I'm sorry, Ren." Then he turned and plunged his hand not into the core, but into his own chest plate, ripping out a Cthar neural parasite that writhed like a black worm. He collapsed, gasping. "Go, save it." Zyra sealed the breach in the dome with a pulse of her energy. Ren cradled Darrow's head. "You're coming back with us. Tell my daughter." "I tried." Darrow whispered, then went still. Outside, the Cthar ship let out a shriek that tore through space itself. A sound of rage and confusion. Without the hate they'd sown, without the division they'd nurtured, their power waned. For the first time, they were vulnerable. Earth and Velos Prime unleashed everything they had. Beams of light and plasma converged on the alien vessel, not to destroy, but to contain. Zyra's scientists had developed a resonance cage, a field tuned to the Cthara's frequency, trapping them in a loop of their own emptiness. As the cage closed, the Cthar ship imploded, vanishing into a point of absolute silence. Peace returned. Not the fragile, paper-thin piece of treaties, but something deeper, something earned. In the weeks that followed, Ren and Zyra stood before the rebuilt Accord archives, now a joint Earth-Velari embassy. Reyes shook Ren's hand, her eyes proud. "You did good, son." Zyra was offered a seat on the new Galactic Concord Council. She accepted, but only if Ren served as her liaison. They married under twin suns on a neutral moon, human and Velari guests mingling awkwardly at first, then laughing over shared stories and terrible karaoke. And in the years after, as their children, 5 in all, each with blue-tinged skin and wild white curls, played among the ruins of old battlefields now turned to gardens. Ren would sometimes wake in the night, heart pounding, expecting alarms, war, loss. But then Zyra's hand would find his in the dark, warm and sure, and he'd remember. They had built something worth protecting. Not just peace, not just alliance, but a family, forged in fire, stitched together with stubborn love, and as unshakable as the stars themselves. Years passed like sand slipping through open fingers, quietly, steadily, beautifully. The war with the Cthar faded into history books, taught now not as a tale of terror, but as the crucible that forged a new age of unity between human and Velari. Ren Vale, once a lonely engineer on a forgotten outpost, became a legend, not for his battles, but for the bridge he helped build between two worlds. And Zyra, the warrior queen with white hair and silver eyes, became more than a sovereign. She became a symbol of love that refused to be silenced by fear, distance, or duty. They made their home on the newly terraformed moon of Illyria, nestled between Earth's blue glow and Velos Prime's twin suns. Their house wasn't grand by royal standards, just a sprawling, sunlit compound built from reclaimed starship hulls and Velari crystal, surrounded by gardens that bloomed with Terran roses and Velari moonwillows. It was here, beneath a sky where human and alien constellations intertwined, that their children grew. 5 of them, each a miracle of biology and belonging. Their eldest, Kira, had Zyra's luminous eyes and Ren's stubborn grin. She could recalibrate a fusion reactor before breakfast and recite Velari War epics backward by lunch. Then came twin boys, Jorin and Tail, wild as comets, always racing hover sleds through the canyons or sneaking into the orbital docks to borrow maintenance drones. Little Morel, their gentle-hearted fourth, preferred stargazing and composing songs on a hybrid lute that hummed in both human and Velari scales. And baby Nissa, the youngest, who already commanded attention with a single imperious eyebrow raise that was pure Zyra, and a laugh that sounded exactly like Ren's. Life wasn't without chaos. There were scraped knees from zero-gravity tumbles, diplomatic dinners interrupted by toddler tantrums, and one infamous incident where Jorin accidentally turned the ambassador from Mars blue for a week using a misconfigured BioLite palette. But through it all, through council sessions, engineering consults, bedtime stories in 2 languages, and quiet evenings watching twin suns set over violet hills, Ren and Zyra never let go of each other's hands. On their 10th anniversary, Ren surprised Zyra with a restored version of the old jump ship from Outpost Theta. He'd spent months rebuilding it in secret, down to the last scorched panel. "For old time's sake," he said, kissing her temple as they stood in the hangar, their children peeking from behind crates with wide eyes. Zyra ran her fingers over the hull, tears shimmering in her silver gaze. "You remembered. I remember everything," he whispered. They took the ship out that night. Not to war, not to escape, but just to drift among the stars that had once tried to keep them apart. Their children slept in the rear cabin, curled together like starlings, while Ren and Zyra sat in the cockpit, wrapped in a single thermal blanket, sharing a flask of spiced Velari wine and a bar of earth chocolate. Slightly melted, just how she liked it. "I used to think love was weakness," Zyra said, watching the nebulous swirl in soft purples and golds outside the viewport. "That to rule I had to be stone. And now?" Ren asked, brushing a strand of white hair from her face. "Now I know love is the only thing strong enough to hold galaxies together," she said, turning to him. "Especially ours." Back on Illyria, life bloomed. Kira enrolled in the joint Terran-Velari Academy of Sciences. Jorin and Tail, after one too many hoversled accidents, were apprenticed to a legendary starship mechanic who claimed they had the hands of engineers and the hearts of lunatics. Morel's music became a bridge in its own right. Her compositions played at peace summits and school festivals alike. And little Nissa? She declared at age 4 that she would be a chef, and by 6, she'd mastered both synth noodles and Velari firecakes so perfectly that even the sternest diplomats wept with joy. Ren still tinkered. His workshop was a glorious mess of human tools and Velari resonators, where he taught his children how to weld circuits and listen to the hum of a well-tuned engine. Zyra still ruled, but from home more often than not, holding council meetings via HoloLink while braiding Morel's hair or helping Nissa measure flour. They grew older, their faces lined with laughter more than worry. Ren's hair grayed at the temples. Zyra's blue skin gained the faint, elegant tracery of age that Velari called star threads. But their hands still found each other in crowds, in silence, in sleep. One evening, long after the children had their own homes and dreams, Ren and Zyra sat on their porch as twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and indigo. The wind carried the scent of blooming night flowers and the distant laughter of grandchildren. 10 of them now, with names like Soren, Lyra, and Little Vale, who already had his grandfather's knack for fixing things and his grandmother's unshakable stare. Zyra leaned her head on Ren's shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come to Earth that day?" Ren smiled, squeezing her hand. "I don't need to, because you did. And you asked me why I abandoned you." He paused, voice soft. "And I spent the rest of my life making sure you never had to ask it again." She turned to him then, her eyes bright with love and memory. "You never did, you know." "Did what?" "Abandon me." He kissed her then, slow, deep, full of decades of gratitude, joy, and quiet triumph. Around them, the world they built hummed with peace. Children playing, ships gliding silently through orbit, two species sharing one sky, one future. And in that moment, under the watchful stars that had once been battlegrounds, Renvale and Queen Zyra knew with absolute certainty that they had won not just a war, but something far greater. A life of love, laughter, and legacy that would echo through generations. They had not just survived. They had flourished, and they had done it together.